Hi there, you're listening to Unnatural Selection, the show about newsy type stuff and things. My name is and always will be George.
My name is Tom, pending.
And if you want to call me by my real name, you can, and it is Adam.
And with our powers combined, we are Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a morning edition of the show, and I am caffeinated.
Woo! Yeah, I just realized, I was like, I finished my coffee. I should have made one before we started, because now it's going to be a good hour and a half before I can have another coffee.
How many coffees do you have?
I have like 2 in a day, maybe, but
just consecutively.
Not enough time.
Well, not consecutively. Usually both in the morning.
Okay.
Like, one at the start, maybe one mid-morning. But the point is that one gets me back to I've had a night's sleep, like base.
Yes.
That's base level. I'm at base level now. I'm not now energized. I'm an addict.
I just need to get to normal, man.
I just need to get
Just
to
need a hit, bruh.
Yeah, sorry, not to shit on people who actually have problems with addiction and all that sort
No,
of stuff.
I think when people understand it was done in the context of a comedy podcast, Tom, I think you're okay. And no one's taking this as like a Senate hearing. Just relax.
No, I don't know.
I'm pretty sure 90% of Melbourne are addicts then, if that's the case, because a lot of people drink coffee here. It's probably
the most addictive legal drug is probably coffee. Caffeine, sorry.
Yeah.
Given how prolific it is in a few things.
Espresso martinis are just really good. If you go to a cocktail bar and then actually it's like my partner don't drink them that much, but my partner's like espresso martini. Done.
They just got to make it right. They got to make me the espresso shot. I hate it when it's like, oh, you want an espresso martini? And they go to near the beer taps and just pour something
and just
out.
like some old lady's diarrhea comes out of the tap.
It's just like some gross milky sludge out of a tap. I'm like, no.
Yeah, just a geriatric soft serve machine in the corner, just shitting out espresso.
But hilariously, my partner will not drink coffee, but she will.
Well, no, that's disgusting. Mate, if you put vodka in anything, I'll drink it.
Indeed. So as George said, we are a news and politics podcast. And speaking of putting, different things in different other substances.
There you go.
Allegedly, would you have let's rephrase this. Have you guys, I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
Have you guys looked at mushrooms differently over the last few months since the mushroom saga broke here in Australia?
I can't say
someone says
I still put them on pizza. Like I'm not anti-mushroom now. Like I think the how can I phrase this legally? I don't believe. Here we go. Here's the angle. I don't believe that there is any systemic problem with the mushroom industry in Australia. So I'm not
so politically wakey.
I'm not concerned that if I go to the supermarket, I'm going to get mushrooms that are no good for me. Right. So my use of mushrooms remains unchanged. Tom?
Yeah, I was going to say, it's a similar answer from me, really. Because, it is one of those things where it's like, oh, holy shit, like mushrooms. There are kinds of mushrooms that will just kill you.
Kill you dead.
And I am not versed enough in mushrooms to, if I was out and about, like on alone or something, to know whether that mushroom will kill me or not. But I trust the fact that what I'm buying in a market or in shops isn't going to kill me because I believe from this story that we're about to talk about here, the mushroom industry has been like the sheer level of checks and things that we have in this industry. It is impossible to have gone, whoopsies, I bought some death caps.
Yeah.
Like that's not really
from a small
possible.
Asian grocer.
Yeah. So that was
even then, there's so many regulations around this sort of stuff.
Let me rephrase it. If I say beef Wellington, do you go, delicious? Or do you go,
I'd probably go beef bourguignon rather than beef Wellington. That's more my
beef
speed.
Wellington. I'd eat the shit out of a beef Wellington.
I
wouldn't
honestly, like if we're doing like slow cooked red meats, I'd probably go like a lamb tagine. Like, I think the lamb's probably a bit more succulent than beef. I think beef's a bit chewy sometimes, but it's neither here nor there.
I don't know, you guys, this whole thing has put me off beef Wellington. I'm never eating beef Wellington ever again.
Well, Adam, you're invited over to our house, and the only thing on the menu, beef Wellington, buddy.
Yeah.
Looks like meat's back on the menu, boys.
We are, of course, talking about the suspected mushroom poisoning, where Erin Patterson, Patterson, has now been charged with 3 counts of murder and 5 counts of attempted murder. And this, of course, is after, and we haven't really talked about it on the show because it was like, what a dumb story.
I think we mentioned it in passing, like, oh, there was this crazy mushroom story. And then it was like, that was it. And then like international headlines like news coming out of Australia. It turns out there's been a mushroom poisoning. It's like Leon Gather. And it's like, why is this on the BBC? Why am I reading this on NPR? What's going on? You guys have never had someone got poisoned by something?
Yeah, I feel to derail already what we're the explanation of sort of the story, but I guess it's that, in the huge resurgence of, well, not resurgence, but I guess surge in like true crime fascination across podcasts and all that sort of stuff. I think now we're seeing, rather than it being, oh, have you heard this podcast on the Golden State Killer? Like it's a fascinating kind of story that unfolded. We now, when we see alleged crimes happen, we're like, oh, this feels like
this is going to be
podcast in real time.
Bro, I can't wait for this to become a 6-part podcast.
Or just more like you're experiencing the 6-part podcast, but it comes out like over years because it's actually happening.
Well, on that note, I watched the what was the train to
Busan?
No. The one about
like the zombie movie.
Last Train to Larimer. Was that what it was called?
Last Stop Larimer.
Last Stop Larimer. Sorry. Which was similar. It was like about that guy, Paddy.
We talked about him.
We talked about it on the show. It was like a town of like 11 people, and there's one guy. Paddy's gone missing. And
it's just the one with the dog and the
dog. There's arguments over a dog, and the woman across the street's making pies, and he's like wants to get up in her, and so he makes the pub make pies, and there's this like huge rivalry in this 11-person town, and then Paddy goes
allegedly
missing.
Poisoned the pub's pet croc, and like it's a crazy story.
Anyway, it's like 5 years on, and like true to form, there's like a gritty Netflix crime documentary about the whole thing. Like,
I saw that pop up in my next Netflix queue, and I was like, oh, good, because if someone hadn't done this story, I was going to. Like, oh my god, like that story's nuts. But anyway, let's jump back to.
Sorry.
So if you've been living under a rock,
it's a good show.
Erin Patterson, 49, she hosted a lunch in her Leongatha home with the parents of her ex and the sister of...
it's like parents and aunt of
correct,
her ex-husband.
And the local pastor, who was the husband of the aunt. Anyway, they had a beef Wellington dish, which is why I can't deal with that anymore. I don't know, it's just like weirded me out. Which had some mushrooms added to it. And shortly afterwards, they all fell very ill. And then Gail and Don passed away. And I think Gail's sister passed away. And I think the pastor...
the parents of her ex-husband and his aunt died.
Yep.
And the pastor was in hospital for 2 months. Like critical condition sort of stuff, but has recovered, thankfully.
Well, not fully, but he's released from hospital.
He's alive. Following.
And then, curiously, the ex-husband was meant to be there, and he wasn't. Because... There's I think a few years of estrangement between the two of them, the tensions, like like not an amicable split by the sound of it. Well, Tom, it's funny because it turns out she's been charged with trying to kill him in November of 21, May of 22, on the 6th of September 22, And also the recent one, because he was a target of allegedly of this beef Wellington dish.
I'm so
Tom, I wonder why.
I'm so curious. Is she just like bringing over sandwiches like Jeffrey Dahmer style? Like, why'd you eat what's in this mystery sandwich? Like, what's happening with these other attempted murders? I'm so curious. Allegedly.
That's the other part of it. Like, so the court documents of what's been filed is shown the previous the alleged previous attempts as well as the more recent one, but all of them have been related to meals allegedly. So it's not just like someone's attempted to murder you a few different ways, but it's like on 3 other occasions you're alleged to have tried to poison this man but with something you've cooked. Who's eating anything you're making anymore?
But it's
it's an allegation, right?
Tom, you got to try this beef Wellington.
To poison me.
I don't know what she does with it. I think there's like a reduction involved. I think, maybe there's some like essence of rosemary, or she smokes it or something. It's fucking unreal. It's worth taking the risk.
Like, George, if I suspected you would try, like, I had lunch at your place on Sunday. Like, if I suspected at any time that you might want to kill me.
Try this sausage, Tom. This one in particular.
Yeah, unless I'm going there to be like, oh, George's sausages are great. It's like eating fugu. Like, the thrill is that it might kill me. You haven't prepared it properly.
The fugu's the puffer fish that...
the Japanese puffer fish. Delicacy, like, unless the thrill of it for me is that, oh, this is so exciting it might kill me, I'm not eating anything you're making for me ever again if I suspect you have even the slightest inclination.
The best part about it was the night before she got arrested, and she's been arrested and remanded in custody. They haven't given her bail. Well, she hasn't applied for bail, I think, actually, what it might be, but she was celebrating. She was having a party at her house. I was like, who would go to that party and be like, I guess I'll just...
Is it dinner or just drinks?
Just drinks, I think.
I'd go to a cocktail party. You would. And you just sit there at the cocktail party and go...
Is it BYO? Bring your own drinks.
Oh, yeah, definitely bring one. BYO. Sealed. And you just go, do you reckon she did it? That's the whole cocktail party. It's just whispering and looking over at it.
And of course, this happened back in July. So the story broke. And obviously, the reason why we're talking about mushrooms is that the medical examiner basically said they've got symptoms of, death cap mushroom poisoning.
By death cap mushrooms.
So, and I'll also give her her response. She wrote a statement to police. In that statement, she said that she also got sick. She was obviously very distraught at having, all these close people in her life unwell and dying. And she also said that that she basically bought these mushrooms from a local supermarket and also an Asian grocer.
Yeah, there were two kinds of mushrooms I thought she'd put in the dish, right? So
they hadn't been foraging. She'd bought them, and it wasn't her fault. And
from what I understand, she can't. They couldn't place the Asian grocer that she bought the other mushrooms from. It was
just an Asian grocer.
Can't remember where those.
Also, they're in Leongatha. I don't know if it is a.
How many different Asian grocers specifically are in Leongatha?
Yeah. Leongatha is a small. It's probably a couple of tens of thousand people, something like that in sort of Gippsland sort of area of Victoria.
It's a town. It's not a city. It's
maybe a few thousand people.
Population of like 6,000.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Anyway, so
I thought also part of that statement was that, there were leftovers of this that she and her children.
Correct. She was unwell
with the ex-partner, I believe, had also eaten some of. So, but hadn't fallen deathly ill, and
I remember she said she said at the time that she was hospitalized.
But the kids and stuff had eaten some of it and not fallen unwell, and then they threw out the rest. So, that's the statement from her side of it. It's just the thing of when this first was there's clearly tension in this relationship and a estranged partner. They split up. It's clearly not very amicable. There's interventions maybe happening is what this lunch was meant to be, or or breaking bread to try and show give an olive branch and all that sort of stuff. And but then for these charges to come out to be no, prior to the infamous lunch happening, there had been 3 alleged attempts to try and poison this man beforehand.
Four.
This suddenly got. I thought it was 4, including the lunch.
It's 4 including it, I think.
November. 4 including the one he didn't.
Yeah, 4 including lunch. Yeah.
Yeah. And just like for all that, there wasn't just this completely out of the again allegedly like completely out of the blue attempt at poisoning. It seemed that maybe there were several others before then.
Fool me once,
it just paints a whole different picture.
Shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. Fool me 3 times, there's still more fooling to do. Fool me 4 times, you've been arrested for murder.
But yeah, like this broke on as obviously happened around July, and so she's been, the media was going into a frenzy, being like, "Did she do it on purpose? Yeah. She hadn't been charged."
Calling all documentary filmmakers, calling all gritty Netflix documentary filmmakers.
Yeah, the journalists are trying to do the true crime series in real time as soon as they hear it, right?
And so I was thinking, maybe it had sort of gone away, but obviously police have just been building their case over the last few months. And and when she got arrested, the media in Australia went wild, I guess is what we would say. Absolutely
fucking mind. You sent us that you must have been getting your morning coffee or something, Adam, because I imagine you don't purchase the Herald Sun.
No.
But you showed us. No one does. People only get it for free in cafes.
Yeah. The Herald. No one buys the Herald Sun so much as the Herald Sun gets lobbed at you by passing, boys on bicycles. It arrives at your house somehow.
They just pay paper boys to annoy people rather than to fulfill subscriptions.
Look at our incredible circulation. We've got an army of 10-year-olds assaulting people with papers all over the country. Some of them are bound to read it.
I don't know if we can post it up on our website or something, but it was 5 pages.
6 or 8, 5 pages, right? Yeah.
So there was the front, was a front page spread, and then the second and third page were stuff about the Caulfield Cup and some kangaroos or something, and then page 4, 5, 6, 7 were just all about the mushrooms.
Can I just
who were the victims?
There are two different
history.
There are 2 different wars happening at the moment. One of them's fresh.
I was going to say, do the Herald Sun know there's a genocide happening in Gaza? Because I know, newsworthiness of the mushroom story and more, locally, but, 6 pages worth of it?
Maybe if we frame it in terms of, mushroom poisonings, it's just be it's 3,000 mushroom poisonings have happened in Gaza over the last couple of weeks. Maybe they'll be like, oh my God, that's incredible. We need to cover this.
3,000 Leon Gather mushroom poisonings have been happening to children in Gaza, except the mushrooms are a highly advanced bombs.
Smart bombs made by the US military in Kentucky.
Also maybe provided from Australian aid and stuff, but no, let's just talk about the mushroom lady for 7 pages. It's crazy.
And now we're fulfilling the prophecy because we haven't talked about the mushroom lady now for 15 minutes. But it would be remiss.
What about the food dehydrator, Adam? 5 more minutes. Okay, so there was. Give me a minute. My friend. Let me tell you something. Give me 5 minutes. So there was a food dehydrator that was allegedly at the house, and then her husband said something to the effect to her of is that what you used to poison them with? And then apparently she freaked out, disposed of the food hydrator in a dump site, and then lied to the police about it and said that she'd done that months earlier, but that wasn't the case. And so they've recovered the dehydrator from the dump site, and I don't know, presumably they've tested it for something. But it's just so many twists and turns.
How do you find a jury now that's fucking non-prejudiced after all this? Do you know what I mean?
Well, we're prejudicing our 65 listeners right now as we do this podcast. So,
but everyone's across it. I was like, oh, that lady got found guilty, got charged. I said that at work, and the sales manager comes out of his office. He goes, I knew she fucking did it. I kept walking. I was like, oh yeah.
Cool.
Everyone knows about it.
So you'll be on the jury?
Wow, that shows
fair and impartial.
Yeah, that shows a real poison. poisoning, I guess, of our culture in sort of a way of like the very fact that someone's charged of a crime is an immediate, oh, well, they did it then. It's like, oh, no. That's not how our system's meant to work.
You know what they say?
US counties have issues because true crime in the US, like, murders and stuff, are so much bigger than they are here. And trying to find a jury in the US that's like biased is sometimes, particularly if it's in small areas or small rural areas, is fucking difficult.
I suppose the US is such a big country that you could relocate the trial elsewhere.
Yeah, and that's what they do sometimes.
Where people just haven't heard of it. But I think Australia as a country is it's a little bit insular in that regard. Like everyone's heard of the fucking mushroom story, right? Like, I don't think you could really find 12 people who if you did find 12 people that legitimately hadn't heard of the story, you might want to ask them about their, are you homeschooled? What's your information? You've got access to the internet, right? We're just going to do a quick welfare check on these people who haven't, these 12 people who allegedly haven't heard anything about this story at all in the last 6 months.
Yeah. I don't know. There's 10 people up in Larimar who might not have been hearing about it. So
they've been busy. They've been busy getting interviewed by the Glass Brothers.
Yeah, they've been busy in their own with their own true crime issues.
Making pies.
I don't know nothing, says Fran. I'm a good person. I definitely didn't kill him.
Now, last week,
allegedly.
She says that's what she said. I'm just saying what she said. I didn't kill him.
Yes, you're not saying it in some very sarcastic tone that has.
I didn't do nothing wrong. I don't know nothing.
Last week, Tom posted an article which we reported on the show about the two Melbourne neo-Nazis that were found not guilty. Well, they were found guilty, but
they got
guilty.
time served.
Time served, and off they went.
Time served. One of them had spent 6 months in jail already, sort of stuff, and the other one that avoided more jail time. To which the judge, sort of their argument was that these two men, I think, the odds of rehabilitation are good, and good luck, gentlemen, I believe they said, as they let the neo-Nazis out, and they immediately fronted the media, said Australia is for the white man, Heil Hitler, Nazi saluted, and wandered off.
Yeah, it's the immediate.
Oh, great! Yeah, odds of rehabilitation are good, are they, magistrate? Are they? They literally just walked out of the fucking court.
Yeah, Judge.
Nazi shit.
Judge, I wish you well, Nazi. Immediately Zig Heils. He just can't help himself. It's one of those things. It's like, you walk through a door, and it's like, you've got to. You sort of go, why did I come into this room? It's just reflexive. I think that's what Nazis are like with Zig Heils. They walk in the door, they just Zig Heil to no one just to remind themselves.
It was even more specific than that, sort of, because so the gentleman in question, they were Thomas Sewell and
Jacob Hersant.
Jacob Hersant, two rather well-known, I guess, members of some neo-Nazi societies. But Mr. Hersant, when they were out in front of the court doing their things, said Heil Hitler and raised his right arm at the 90-degree angle, the Nazi salute, and then went, oh, nearly did it. It's illegal now, isn't it? Whoopsies. And then wandered off.
Stop heiling yourself. Stop heiling yourself.
Yeah, it is, Jacob, because guess what? Police are planning to charge him for doing it because it is now illegal to display Nazi symbols in Victoria, including the salute. What's that? The consequences of your actions? Motherfucker. Oh, man. Happy birthday to me, by the way, because it was my birthday that legislation came into effect. Eat the best Nazi scumbags.
The best present that Tom could ever get for his birthday, I think.
Yeah. Wonderful. But just,
nice try,
amazing. I love it. You just dodged more jail time for your Nazi chicanery, and then you just go out, do some Nazi shit, and you might end up straight back in there, friend.
That's what makes me think it was reflexive. It's just it's one of those things.
Right?
You put your hands in the doorway. There's a lot of doorway metaphors in this, but you put your hands in the doorway and then you push against them, and then your hands just start to rise up on their own.
Just start rising.
It's like that, but with a Zig Heil. He didn't mean to. It was just reflexive.
Just, yeah. I don't know.
Needs to do
I think this is great.
crosswords or something, train the brain out of it, just like do some Sudoku.
Yeah, you reckon a Sudoku would solve it?
I feel like this is...
Yeah.
I feel this is some good, good news. We rarely talk about good news on the show, but I think it's good news if they're planning to, if they actually charge him with this sort of stuff, because I feel part of the issue here is just how comfortable they feel brazenly showing their Nazi ideals. So, fucking like throw the book at them.
Fuck him.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's actually been charged yet. I think they were planning to charge that was earlier in the week. So whether or not that's taken effect, I'm not sure.
Victoria Victoria Police said a 24-year-old Point Cook man, which everyone's like, it's Jacob Hersant.
Whoever that might be.
Was interviewed. This was last Thursday, but saying was interviewed yesterday, so it would have been on like Wednesday last week, and was expected to be charged on summons.
Okay.
So, and it's the first time a Nazi salute has been reported to police since the new legislation came into effect on October 21.
There you go.
That's why it's there, following all the other times that the neo-Nazis have been more than comfortable doing their shit in front of everybody at various protest events and stuff.
People are too comfortable.
So good.
That's what I think. They're too comfortable.
They are
espousing their dog shit
They are far
views.
too comfortable. Yeah, they are far too comfortable with their, just fascist ideals, and they feel like that they can just express them with zero consequences. So, yeah, good. Good. Fuck them.
Fuck them. And speaking of consequences...
Yes! Very good!
The Qantas AGM recently occurred, and you might be thinking, why the fuck are you guys talking about an AGM? How boring. But... look, it is pretty boring in terms of details.
AGMs can be exciting.
Oh, I don't know,
I've watched Succession.
So, for those who don't...
I feel like the people watching the AGM in Succession were probably pretty bored, to be fair. It was all stuff happening behind the scenes that was interesting.
So, for those who don't know, an AGM is an annual general meeting where a bunch of stockholders come and review the performance of the company. And oftentimes, there are various votes that occur from shareholders to suggest the direction of the company, right? So in this instance, one of the things that shareholders were able to vote on was the remuneration report. So essentially, a certain area of the company produces a report that says this is how much money we think we should give to executives in the form of bonuses and stuff as a result of this financial performance. And shareholders have an opportunity to vote that up or vote it down. Now, the vast majority of the time, shareholders are kind of asleep at the wheel. They're just kind of like, yeah, whatever you reckon, Alan. And but not this time. So overwhelmingly at the last AGM, Qantas shareholders voted against the airline's remuneration report at a rate of a mammoth 82.98%. So only 16.95% of shareholders voted in favor of adopting the report, and it may be because they were executives at the company. I don't know why. 16.95% of them were like, "You're doing a great job, Alan. Everything's going great, buddy. You deserve every penny you get, my friend."
I don't know if it's actually anything to do with Alan Joyce, to be fair. He's taken his money. He's gone. That's it.
Okay, but from what I understand, this remuneration report would have an effect on his exit package, like how much he gets in bonuses in his golden handshake on the way out. That was my understanding.
No, I don't know about that. I don't know. I haven't read that anywhere. I mean, it could be. I just don't know if that's confirmed. That's all.
It makes sense because he wasn't supposed to be leaving until a bit later, right? He left early,
maybe,
as we talked about earlier in the year. I don't know. Just when have you ever seen like nearly 83% of people agree on anything?
Yeah, we couldn't get
like that high.
We couldn't even get 51% for the yes vote, but everyone, all of a sudden, 83% of people are complete unanimous agreement about the remuneration report. Like that's crazy.
Well, and the voice referendum was an absolute bollocking against the yes vote already, and it wasn't even 83% of people voting against it. That's a turbo bollocking in a vote. Like,
that is like Vladimir Putin levels of popularity.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't mean that they're still the package still passes. They still get all that. But what it means is, this is where it gets interesting, and I didn't know any of this about corporations law. So if more than 25% vote against the report, it's known as what they call a first strike. So this is strike one. And if next year the same thing happens, or more than 25% vote against, then they spill the board.
Yeah, basically it just becomes the purge.
Spill.
But interestingly, there's only, as far as I'm aware, there's only 2 board members seeking re-election this AGM.
I don't think it matters. That. Like, I think if you get a couple of strikes against you from the shareholders, it's a complete like double dissolution.
This doesn't matter. Yeah,
election, like a clean slate, everyone from scratch sort of thing. It doesn't matter if you're up for election or not. So,
yeah, which is why, and that's why this motion, I guess, is so significant in that the only vote against this, the only time this has happened in Australian corporate history is when I think 85% of NAB shareholders voted against the NAB package in 2018. And I think Westpac had like a 61% no for the same, against, because all to do with the Royal Commission, right? All the banks sort of copped a bollocking after that. So this is pretty significant. It's the first time Qantas has ever had this. And it's one of the largest ones in Australia's history. So, I mean, in theory, this is meant to send a very clear signal to the board of like, hey, sort your shit out. Don't, sort out the ghost flight thing, stop firing people, sort out workers' rights, do all the things that we expect you to do. And most importantly, please deliver flights on time and within budget. That would be nice. Whether or not they do any of that's another question. I mean, the new CEO has, promised, everything will be fixed and we'll sort it out and we'll start again and yada, yada.
It'll take time to rebuild trust in Qantas.
Yeah. But, we'll see, I guess. I mean, the whole ACCC things hasn't even kicked off yet. So
I love a good shot across the bow.
Hey,
guys.
Good protest vote.
Hey, guys. How's it going? We're watching.
Yeah.
We aren't just mindless AGM attendees who go, whatever. I'm here for the free sandwiches.
Here is the thing that George is talking about. So, former CEO Alan Joyce's substantial package has been a key focus of the I can't say that word. Someone please say it for me.
Has Alan Joyce's substantial package been a real focus of this report?
Oh, I've been focusing on his substantial package for the last couple of years.
Yeah, girl. She says the Qantas board still has levers available to claw back a substantial amount of his final payout.
Yeah, told you.
With 14.4 million in addition to another 2.19 million held. So they've still got a portion of it, which they can play around with. She said the board will decide what to do with his final payout based on evidence, including the legal challenges the airline is facing. And I guess this vote will probably go towards that as well. So there you go.
It's not often you see good examples of shareholder activism, right? Like, there was that whole thing with Mike Cannon-Brookes trying to put seats on the board of so Mike Cannon-Brookes of Atlassian tech company in Sydney was trying to do a takeover of some fossil fuel company, I forget which one it was, and like get some board seats on there and try and like basically mold the company into being a bit more like aware of the renewable energy future kind of situation. Yeah. But aside from that, I can't think of any good examples of shareholder activism. Like mainly it's been people like Lee Iacocca going in and just like fucking shit up and, for their own profit. You know what I mean? It's just like someone comes in and starts bossing people around and getting people pushed out that they don't like in order to turn around and sell it off for a short-term profit 2 months later. Like that's the sort of shareholder activism I'm familiar with. But this seems good. I don't think it's even activism. Like, I don't know if anyone was like jockeying for this. I think people just like read the news and were like, hey, this seems shit. Can you guys fix this? I'm invested in this.
Angry shareholders are particularly angry, as it turns out, in a lot of situations.
That's the one thing we can agree on.
Yeah,
nice.
So I don't really understand this next story, but was it a tweet? It was reporting from some Murdoch media outlets. What is this situation?
So, recently, some outlets, I think, including like news.com and
Daily
the Daily Mail
and the West Australian.
And the West Australian, that was it. Posted some stuff, posted some articles about a pro-Palestinian rally that was occurring in Australia, saying that Senator Jacinta Price was speaking at this rally. I mean, like, that's like, I guess with everything going on in Gaza at the moment, that any political figures sort of taking a stance one way or the other is newsworthy in that instance, and I guess sort of maybe some surprise of Jacinta Price doing such a thing. But it turns out she didn't do such a thing. It was just some other Indigenous Australian woman at the rally. It wasn't Jacinta Price. It wasn't at all. They were just like, they saw a photo of this person and they were like, that's Jacinta Price. It's like, no, it's just a completely different woman.
Oh no!
Nope.
They
ran with it.
This must be the only Indigenous woman in Australia because we've been covering her for the last 6 months, so it must be the same one.
Yeah. And charitably, you can say like, people mix up people all the time, but you then check. Yeah. Like you're a newspaper. You maybe be like, someone heard that Jacinta Price was at this thing. Do you have photos? Is that her? Let's talk to her office and stuff. Like, confirm it. You confirm this shit. You don't just go.
See media watchers take on this. I'd love to see Paul Barry just light up. Just like go ham at this shit.
He's just like, what do we cover? What do we cover this week, boys? He sees this pop up. He's like, job done. Time for lunch.
Yeah.
But Paul, it's 10:30. Of course, so I said time for lunch.
Yeah. But of course, you Google this story, and some of the links still came up over the past couple of days. But you click them, they go to 404 pages. They're like, it's like, because you guys realized how much you fucked up. But some of the stuff was cached. I know, George, you did a little search, and the Google result had maybe the first paragraph, and it straight up said outspoken Senator Jacinta Price has joined a pro-Palestinian rally in Sydney with a rousing call to come together to end colonialism and racism. No, she didn't. It wasn't her. It was someone else. It's real bad.
Yeah, so it's like,
bad.
I Googled Jacinta Price Palestinian rally, and it's like, that little blurb, it's like one paragraph from news.com.au comes up, but if you click through to the article, it goes through to nothing. Obviously, they've removed the article, but Google's web
caching.
crawler has cached it, and it hasn't hasn't recrawled their website yet to notice that it's not there anymore. So the search result still stands for a little while, but
the internet never forgets and it never forgives.
Internet never forgets and it never forgives.
Nope. Yeah, it's like an elephant.
So
real bad.
So Jacinta Price wasn't there.
Don't worry, everybody. Yeah, don't worry, everybody. Where Jacinta Price actually is at the moment is much worse. I honestly would rather she was speaking at a pro-Palestinian rally calling for the end of colonialism and racism, because where she actually was fucking Turf Island in the UK.
Turf Island!
Was off in the UK with this guest list of just absolute fuckheads. Former Prime Minister John Howard, former Prime Minister Tony Abbott, Jordan Peterson, Kevin McCarthy,
Mike Johnson, MAGA Mike Johnson, Michael Gove.
Yep.
And this is the Alliance to, what was it called? The Alliance for Responsible Citizenship. Or the ARC conference, which was held
conference.
Inaugural, very first. So she was there attending this den of iniquity.
This right-wing orgy of terrible ideas.
So attention, future time travelers. November 2023 is the date that you want to come back to. That's where it all started, when the conservative hive mind first fused for the first time in the way that it has. So that's the date. We now know.
And of course, and this right wing, shit gathering all talking about fantastic ideas, like how John Howard has said he's, quote, always had trouble with multiculturalism.
Yeah, and
you think, John?
Said anyone born prior to 1990?
Like, yeah, he's the full quote was, multiculturalism is a concept that I've always had trouble with. I take the view that if people want to emigrate to a country, then they adopt the values and practices of that country. And in return, they are entitled to have the host citizenry. In return, they're entitled to have the host citizenry respect their culture without trying to create some kind of federation of tribes and
that's
culture.
Why
you get into trouble with that.
And that's why, as a white man, I am a member of the Wurundjeri people and I speak the native language of Australia. Huh? Oh, no.
Right?
He's saying when they come here, they adopt white values and they do everything like us, the colonizers, not like the original people. We didn't do that when we came here. But
no.
The next people now, starting now, everyone who comes here adopts the current values, which are my values.
Yeah. When you rock up to a place where people are already there, you adopt their culture. Except that time when we did it. No, that was when we settled. We didn't immigrate. We settled.
Yeah,
settled aggressively. Who was the person? Who was the person? We were settlers, not immigrants. Who was that?
Was that
this woman who always made a huge thing about. No, American women, I think, were always super anti-immigration and all this sort of stuff. But they were like, but your family's European descendant sort of thing, and your ancestors would have been immigrants to this country. It's like, no, we weren't immigrants, we were settlers. Like, no, that's different. Like the coming over and wiping out an indigenous population is no, that's different. That's not immigration.
The whole thing about the whole
hell,
just the language, right? The language around that is very interesting. Settlers implies that whole sort of terra nullius thing, right? No one was on this land, and so we just came unoccupied, and we just hung out and settled this virgin land, right? Except, of course, that's not how anything works. There's wherever you go, there's people. There's people all over this fucking world. So wherever you go, there was already people there.
Yep, there are already people there. It's always so wild as well, because when people like John Howard talk about stuff like this, I feel that
everyone, all who listened in the room stands up and listens as well. Is the other thing.
Yes, it's all they stand up and listen as well. But he means it as to be oi, if you're coming over to Australia, you have to then just start acting like a white Australian, in this weird way of no, let's not bend to, being respectful to Asian people's cultures or all the litany of cultures.
Mate, you have halal Vegemite, and the next thing you know, we're practicing Sharia law. It's just as easy as that, mate. It's you just go, whoa, and there's Sharia law. That's how it happens.
Yeah. Because whilst the I feel the real angle that they should be when you talk about things like this is more like if I moved to Japan, I would respect their culture. If I'm immigrating to Japan, and there are it's a completely different cultural attitudes to a lot of different things over in Japan. I know, for example, photographing people in public, there's whole different laws around that over there. You can't just be whipping out your phone to film people. Even on trains and stuff like that, that you see fucking young people doing in their TikToks and stuff. No, my point is that there's cultural differences over there that I would respect if I moved to Japan. But if I was, so you do live in the culture that you have moved into, but Japan wouldn't then also be Japan shouldn't be fuck you if
stop speaking English.
Yeah, right? All those sorts of things. But that's not what John Howard is meaning, right? It's not the same thing of if someone moves over to Australia, of course, the laws and traditions and all these sorts of things, and that's fine. But you also have your traditions. There should be a prayer room in this building, so you have time to pray towards Mecca and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, great. Awesome. That's not impinging on our
no one in Japan
culture.
Is saying you can't celebrate Christmas in your house, right? It's, you know what I mean?
You're not you're not coming in and you're not adopting the values of you're not adopting the values of Australia just if you want to pray to Mecca each day.
As someone who's
it's misunderstanding. He's misrepresenting what multiculturalism means. Multiculturalism means that as a person who lives in an area, you are multicultural. That is that you understand and respect the values, cultures, and traditions of the other people that live around you. So you're not just white, Christmas, Anglo, and that's all you understand in the world. That you also understand that at a certain time of year, Islamic people want to have.
Did you just say you are white, Christmas, Anglo?
yes.
Christian Anglo. You know what I mean?
I identify as Christmas.
I identify as a white Christmas Anglo.
Church of Latter-day Santa.
But you're not just that, but you are also, you understand that, at certain times of the year, Islamic people are going to fast. You understand that on certain days of the year, there are Jewish people who are going to be walking around going to their synagogues and temples and stuff. And that's fine. They're allowed to do that. And you understand what that is. It's not saying that you have to get up and go and do that yourself. Multiculturalism implies that there is a respect and understanding. It doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be practicing necessarily other cultures, which is kind of what he's labeling this as, is that somehow we as the person who is naturalized into a certain country, that you are therefore forced to adopt the person coming in's ways of doing things. So multiculturalism has always been about respect and understanding. This concept of being able to, that you're somehow being, that your rights are being impinged upon, which again is classic conservative thinking, which is what we saw in The Voice. And this is probably where it leads to, because this was all in the context of, at this conference, they were discussing the successful no vote and how that means basically, let's extrapolate on this. This is what Tony Abbott was saying a couple of weeks ago, is that somehow it means that there's also a great reset as well of Australian values somehow, that the no vote therefore means we can reset everything. Despite the fact the no vote was only 60%. It's not the overwhelming majority. There are still 40% of Australians that were very keen to have the voice.
You got to love the hyper-conservative position on everything, which always, no matter what the circumstances, whatever happens, their response is, you know what this means? We've got to be even more conservative. It's like the LNP loses the election handily to Anthony Albanese and the Labor Party, right? And their response is, well, it's because they didn't respect us. We should have been more conservative. We drifted too far to the middle. So they lose. Their response is to be more conservative. They win the no vote. And they're like, you know what this means? We should be even more conservative. It's like booze. They're like, you have it when you're sad. You have it when you're happy. It's always a good time for booze. Who's an alcoholic? Not me.
And it's, in some ways, they'd say that multiculturalism has failed in Australia, and perhaps to some extent it has, because the movement was pushed, I think, pretty explicitly. I want to say late 80s, early 90s. It might have been earlier than that. I can't remember exactly. But there was a policy, I think, of multiculturalism. But there are still, and, there are certain, we talked about it last week, there's the Melbourne bubble, okay? And everything is pretty cool in the Melbourne bubble.
It's great.
But if you move outside the Melbourne bubble, the multiculturalism and the mutual respect and the understanding and the knowledge of other cultures and religious practices starts to dip to a certain extent. Not everywhere, but in certain areas you'll struggle to.
But that's an observed phenomenon. Like we know that happens in large city centers where people are actually mixing with other cultures, other foods, other ethnic groups. Yeah. When you have that kind of exposure to other kinds of ethnicities and cultures, it becomes normalized. It's not a big deal. And that happens in, American cities and European cities and all, any kind of large conglomeration of people where you throw a couple million people together, you're going to have that kind of more positive attitude, more progressive politics, more positive attitude towards ethnicities and different immigrants and things like that.
Yeah.
The thing that I've always found interesting about that dynamic is, as you say, as you recede from the city centers and you go out to more rural areas, it becomes more of a monoculture. The people who have the least interaction with immigrants tend to be the ones that hate them the most. And it's like, I don't know who you've been interacting with. like Sally on the Sunshine Coast somewhere. But like, I very much doubt that you've got a lot of interaction with, Sudanese gangs roaming around your neighborhood. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like the people that are like most afraid, that are like most terrified and most anxious about other ethnicities and other communities, the ones that get geared up into these moral panics, are the ones that have like the least amount of interaction with these cultures, like the least knowledge. It's just, I don't know, it's an interesting dynamic. And I think that feeds into the conservative politics thing, right? It's those same kind of personalities that are the ones that are like hyper conservative as well. So it's like there's that rural sort of metro divide. And there's also like a class divide, an education divide. People who are more educated tend to be more progressive, again, tend to be more closer into the cities, tend to be more.
That being said as well, though, I think in certain smaller communities, you develop your own culture, right? Like you are a town, you're a part of that town, and you'll belong to that, and depending on the mix of that town, that will differ as to what that culture is. Because there are certain.
Don't understand.
I don't say all rural towns are like white monoculture. They're not. There are certain towns that are like for instance, Dalesford's very queer friendly, right? For instance. Sure. But yeah, it just depends on where you are in the mix in that town, right?
I'm talking in generalities, of course.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
I just don't understand why. Like, first of all, why is John Howard even getting wheeled out like Hannibal Lecter?
Because he's the icon, man.
He's the OG racist.
Yeah. And despite the fact that his prime ministership benefited from record immigration for a certain period of time, which helped drive the economy and went through a sustained period and set the trajectory. And look, no one can deny, they had like whatever it was, 20, 30, we've had 20 or 30 years of sustained growth since he took prime ministership. Great. But there were certain things that happened during that time that were outside his control, or at least were already happening, that he benefited from greatly. So this concept of that he, some of the things that he achieved, quote unquote, are sort of overblown.
Well, it's the result of larger systemic, like historical factors.
Mining revenues.
Right, yeah, you just happened to cross a mining boom. Like, you didn't do anything in your prime ministership to bring that about, right? So I don't know, I'm wondering why we're getting this bloody wheeling this octogenarian out in order to speak at these conferences. Like, just go have a sit, John. Just go have a sit somewhere, mate. You're done. We've had enough.
The other thing being is like he was part of the 99 referendum, which was, I think, is part of the Republic referendum.
Yeah.
They also had at that referendum, they tied in a clause, a preamble in the Constitution, which said we recognise in the first, Indigenous peoples of Australia or whatever else. In addition to, here comes the cat. I think the contribution that immigrants have made in forging the country, and that would have been part of the new sort of constitution.
You happy now?
The Republic.
All right, you happy now? Leave me alone.
But now, this whole it's like he tried to do that in 99, and now you flip back to now, and now he's saying, oh well, it was racially divisive putting that in. The whole concept of race in this whole debate has been completely misunderstood.
The Overton windows moved so far over to the right on the right side of politics that I think even politicians that were conservative stalwarts back in the 90s, you look at Reagan. A lot of Reagan's positions now from the 80s
just moderate,
are just like very extremely like hardcore fucking moderate. Nixon put together the EPA agency.
Let's not blow too much smoke up Reagan's ass. He was also an absolute turbo fuck.
And he clearly had lost his marbles by the end. I'm not saying it was good.
Did absolutely nothing to help people during the AIDS.
But what I'm saying is the guy that these conservatives like furiously masturbate over and idolize by a lot of current metrics on things like abortion. Like I said, Richard Nixon invented the EPA, a reopened relationship with China. Like, a lot of those things would be like pretty moderate positions now, to the extent that for the Conservative Party, like venerating these guys like gods, it's like But if any of them held those positions in your party now, you'd discount them as rhinos. You know what I mean? Like, it's just because the window of the discourse is just like flung off crazily to the right.
And this is probably a good. I'm going to keep us moving because I'm conscious of time, but it's probably a good way to segue to the U.S. House of Representatives.
Yes,
where the Overton window swung so far to the right that they won't unelect someone or dismiss someone who has been charged with multiple counts, 23 counts of fraud, basically.
Yeah. So people will be familiar with the Republican and inventor of Beanie Babies, George Santos.
Did he invent Beanie Babies?
Famed astronaut.
Founding member of Led Zeppelin. George Santos.
And witness to the signing of the Declaration of Independence.
Oh, wow. That's a big one. I never heard that.
Yeah.
Good for him. Time traveler, George Santos.
Successful negotiator of the release of North Korean hostages, George Santos.
Yeah.
And founder of Apple Computers.
Wow, there you
George
go.
Santos.
Man who stopped the boats, George Santos.
I don't get to, I have no idea.
Very confused.
What is happening right now with this joke?
George Santos is a famous liar.
Yes,
right.
Yes, George Santos has famously lied about a lot of things. My personal favorite being that his mother was killed in 9/11 when she died in 2016.
2016. Nowhere near the Twin Towers, I might add.
But it said that she died in 9/11 and it's just demonstrably false.
Yeah.
What? Okay, so he's pleaded not guilty to 23 counts of federal indictment accusing him of crimes including laundering funds to pay for his personal expenses, illegally receiving unemployment benefits, and charging donors credit cards without their consent. Now, there was
just straight up a donor, someone gave him a credit card and he's just like, thanks for the credit card details, fucko, and just started taking money.
And obviously that donor's like,
hey, wait a minute.
$5.50 Burger King, just on repeat.
What's he doing at Burger King at 3:00 in the morning? What's happening?
So the U.S. House, accordingly decided, well, we probably should put a vote forward to expel him, but it failed. When fewer than 2/3 of the chamber supported the resolution, which obviously preserves the Republicans' majority, which, I mean, if he went, it wouldn't change many things anyway.
Well, that tells you, though, everything sort of about it, right? They have a narrow majority, so to expel a Republican makes that majority even narrower. So now it's kind of, they're in a weird position of, hey, our majority is so narrow that really anything goes, because...
But they're still up by...
Expelling them would be the worst thing.
They're still up by 9. If they lose one, doesn't matter.
Yeah, but you got to remember, there's a whole bunch of crazy Republicans doing their own thing. Well, those are two separate things. So there's the 2/3 majority to oust him, right? And then there's the slim majority that the Republicans have in the House, which is you need just a simple majority to pass legislation. Yes, they're up 8 seats or whatever it is in the House, but a lot of those, it's not, a lot of those Republicans are pretty hard to wrangle. You've got these Freedom Caucus guys led by Matt Gaetz who basically overthrew Kevin McCarthy with the power of those 8 seats, right? So it's not as though they've got a party that's completely in lockstep, when the Democrats...
8 seats matters is what you're saying.
They matter. Yeah. Every seat matters, essentially, because, for every seat that they lose... That's an additional level of power that these crazy sort of hardliners have on the far right. So,
it's just crazy that they're not you'd think as a conservative, you'd be tough on crime. Obviously this.
I'm tough on crime as long as it's someone else's crime. I'm not tough on my own crime. That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
You'll be tough on crime. Guilty, but
you'll be tough on crime, but crime in their eyes is, you had a little bit of weed on you, or you were just driving and I pulled you over.
Yeah, like Bob Menendez. I'm not tough on the crime where I've got $500,000 worth of gold bars in my closet. I'm not tough on that crime. That's normal.
Yeah, no. Not some fun financial crime.
He's still on his committee, by the way. Bob Menendez.
What?
Yep. He's just still doing his thing.
Still doing his thing?
Yep. Not only has he not been ejected from the party, but he's like still sitting on his committees. I don't know what dirt he's got on Chuck Schumer. Like, it's just Bob Menendez coming out of the Senate chamber with just like gold bars falling out of his jacket and everyone just looking around like Stevie Wonder, not seeing it. All right, whatever you say, Bob. Good to see you, mate. See you at lunch.
Mike Johnson, who's now the new speaker, said he does not support expelling Santos for being charged with a crime.
Yeah, because of Donald Trump. That's why.
Yeah, right?
Like, if he's indicted with a crime, he should step down. Then everyone will be like, buddy, have you seen the leader of your party? Like,
or like, oh, buddy, have you seen like so many people in the house? We will like lose half these people.
Yeah.
Like if we do that.
Once Mitch McConnell stops buffering, he's going to be really mad about this.
But Santos's trial isn't scheduled to the 9th of September, 2024. It's a fucking year away.
Cool.
Yeah, well, it's just a bit less than a year. But it's like, what are you doing in that year? What are you doing?
We couldn't pencil him in sooner for the guy who's running the show. It's
right for the elections.
Yeah.
So, system's cooked. Speaking of Mike Johnson, now, how much did you guys discuss Mike Johnson last week, if at all?
We did. We talked about MAGA Mike Johnson. We talked about how he believes there were dinosaurs on the Ark, and he wanted tax breaks for the Creation Museum that said that there were dinosaurs on the Ark. So it's like it's good because he's got a mix of regressive social policies and also terrible financial policies.
Yeah.
So best of both worlds.
Did you also like talk about his adult black son that he said adopting was similar to like the 2009 Sandra Bullock film The Blind Side, which also has more recently discovered that the story that The Blind Side is based on is horse shit.
Yeah, it was fake. The guy came out and said they took advantage of me, basically, didn't he?
Yeah. So that's great. So a weird, interesting dude, but
No, in answer to your question, I didn't know anything about the adopted black son. That's interesting.
Yeah, you know how I learned about that initially? SNL. Like, that's how bad that is. They did a cold open sketch where someone came out being Mike Johnson, and the gag was like, "Oh, I'm definitely a real person who won't just be forgotten. Mike Johnson. It's the most memorable name that there ever was." And he just looks like generic white guy. He's like, "And this is my adult black son." And the guy comes out, he's like, "Hi, I'm adult black son of Mike Johnson." And it was, I don't know, the sketch itself was quite good. And then I looked it up and it was like, oh, okay, yeah, this is all true. And what an interesting guy. But furthermore, the interesting thing, so now that he's become the Speaker of the House, someone dug up a clip from 2022 where Mike Johnson was talking about the fact that he and his 17-year-old son, so not the same man, with one of his teenage sons, that they use a piece of software on all their devices. It is called Covenant Eyes. And the general idea is that it scans all the applications and behavior and history on all your devices, phone, laptop, whatever, and you assign an accountability partner. And if you looked at anything unsavory, and unsavory here being code for pornography, on any of your devices, it would notify your accountability partner that you have, who would presumably then hold you accountable. In this case, for Mike Johnson, his accountability partner is his 17-year-old son, and his 17-year-old son's accountability partner is him. So they are monitoring each other's pornography consumption. And now he phrased it was, "My son has a clean slate, and I'm very proud to say that." So he was saying, I never get an alert that my son's watching pornography, and I'm very proud of that. Didn't say his son never gets an alert that he's watching pornography, which I think is just an interesting little detail sort of there. So yeah, maybe he gets alerts all the time, but they get a
turns out my son's phone is blown up like fucking Christmas Eve. But
yeah, just goddamn, he's aware
clean as a whistle,
all of it. Yep, clean as a whistle. He definitely doesn't have a device maybe that I don't know about.
Well, I was going to say, the way around this, boys, is to go analog. So, I mean, there's still magazines out there. There's old VHS tapes and DVDs you can get. Okay, and those devices are monitored. You can go analog. Okay, you can go offline. All right,
the greatest porn repository of all, the human mind.
Human mind. Or, the greatest porn repository of all for teenage boys, squinting at things until they look like boobs. When in doubt,
that'll work.
Squint at things that looks like boobs.
What is this, a Target catalog? Let's see what we can do.
Yeah, it's just such a... It's just
why would you want to
weird? Not only just for the obviously the weird situation we're all picturing here is that a 17-year-old boy gets a notification on his phone that his dad's been watching Backdoor Sluts 9 or whatever.
I'd love if the notification sound was like horny. It's just like you're at church. It's just it's the notification sound.
Yeah, just like that is strange and unusual. But then the extra element there is like, I know clearly, Mike Johnson describes himself as like a
incredibly horny,
a Bible believing Christian and all that sort of stuff. So I know this is probably sort of a given, but I think just the sheer level of repression this is going to just dump
fucking horny. They're so fucking horny, these conservatives. They're constantly thinking about sex. They're thinking they've got an app, they've got accountability partners. They're constantly talking about sex and all the sex they're not going to have and making sure there's no porn, no sexy porn on their phones, because you can't have any sexy porn on the phone, because if there's sexy porn, they're going to nut, and it's no nut November. Okay, you can't have. It's just like, sir, this is a Wendy's. Like, please come. Why are you screaming at the top of your lungs about sex? It's like, I'm so religious. I'm not focused about sex at all. Like, please, you need to, sir. You need to step off the.
Talking about it. You brought it up.
Yeah, you brought it up. The question was, how was your day?
But just like, I just thinking of how this would warp like a teenage boy's development of their relationship with sex and relationships and all those sorts of things as well. Like, not only like, okay, yeah, of course, teenage boys are horny and like love watching porn and wanking, but also just, if I were him, I'd be afraid to, even if I just wanted to learn more, if I just wanted to like look something up about sex education or like STDs or like anything. So like just some more quote unquote innocent educating myself of things to do with sex. You'd be afraid that your dad now then gets an alert and then you get the chat.
Yeah, what's this? What's this splotch of color on my testicle? And just bloop. It's on your dad's phone. You hear it in the next room.
Right? Or just like advice around things of like, oh, should I be wearing 2 condoms to do things? Like, no, that's a bad idea for XYZ reasons. Just me looking up anything like that. It'll just alert.
I've never heard a more fucking like QAnon fucking conspiracy Masonic temple nonsense app name than Covenant Eyes. What the fuck?
What the fuck? And so I just think that's just like I don't know, borderline abusive to do that to a teenager. I feel.
What's also funny is the app developer for Covenant Eyes would have had to have gone and done a lot of research on different pornographic websites.
I'm talking all kinds of research, buddy. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't believe the kinds of research I'd done for this fucking app.
Yeah, very curious, I guess, as to like, what triggers it to be pornographic content. Like, obviously there's URLs and things, but if it's like actual files, like, is it file names? Does it actually analyze the content of the files?
Oh, buddy, we see it all, okay? I've been through libraries of this stuff looking for all sorts of illicit material.
Yeah, all those
the Insta thoughts that have got like the just
That's a good question, because sometimes you'll be scrolling through Instagram, okay, looking at everyday carry essentials, okay, looking for the perfect backpack, and then all of a sudden there's a dancing girl, and then my wife looks over at me like I'm some sort of pervert because so I'm like, I don't even follow this girl. I was just flicking through on Reels. It recommended. It was a recommendation. I didn't do nothing.
The algorithm knows, mate.
Yeah, the algorithm knows you better than you know yourself. But
just because I want to see dancing girls doesn't mean that I enjoy when they appear out of the ether with my wife sitting behind me. That's not what I wanted at this moment in time, algorithm.
Yeah, it is concerning when the algorithm decides like, oh, well, yes, you will like attractive people doing just dancing around and stuff like that. And it has no concept of maybe timing. If I'm scrolling Twitter on the bus,
yeah,
you don't want it just to feed up like, oh, and here's someone's like titty pics. So you're like, no, like, bus.
My feed is way too sexy for this bus.
Yeah, it's way too sexy for this bus. But
no joke. My Apple Watch just told me I was being too loud. I don't know if you guys could see that with the blur, but
wait, hang on. Your
loud environment sound levels hit 90 decibels. Around 30 minutes at this
90
decibels level can
Why
cause
is
temporary hearing loss.
But okay, so it's
decibels.
all about hearing loss. I was like, have you set something up? Like, is that an auto alert that? Because I know you have a baby. That it's like, is it your wife's? Your wife's watch in the other room has detected this is too loud. Better tell George to shut.
No. It's just like an automatic
sleep.
Apple function.
Yeah.
If you're in a place that's too
Weird.
loud, although the baby has set it off. Leo has definitely set off the 90 decibels alarm more than once.
He'll grow up to be a scream queen.
Polar Knights, a friend of the show, Polar Knights, is saying, "Awesome, the Kiwis are back." I don't know what he's referring to there. Do we have any Kiwis?
I guess are we Kiwis or are we Australians?
Well, we're not Kiwis, so
I can be a Kiwi.
Hilarious.
I mean, New Zealanders seem great. But anyway, the other aspect of this whole accountability partner for my teenage son's pornography intake and vice versa is that, like, aside from the of the weirdness of all that is. Well, then it means that the US Speaker of the House on all his devices is using a third-party piece of software that is analyzing everything on them.
Yeah.
So while we say, how much research have they put into what triggers it to determine that, them some titties, like all those sorts of stuff. Yeah. What is it collecting? How does it go through all that sort of stuff? What does it check? Does it consume everything and then something just spits out an alert if it gets it? Or does it stay on the device? Is it like, who's collecting the data? How do they collect it? How do they store it? And where does it go on a government official?
Just like furiously writing down all of these notes.
It's there's just a Russian hack house going, that's a good point. I should be making notes.
Mm-hmm. So yeah. That's a huge security concern as well. So I don't know. Maybe let's speak this in like a way that these conservative shitlords can understand. For the sake of national security, let your son watch some porn. Take it off
national
the thing.
Security.
National security. Just indulge yourself in just a snifter of pornography now and then. Just like have a treat. Just
on a Saturday, day off.
Yeah, not Sunday. That's the Lord's Day.
It's the Lord's Day. Don't touch Sunday. But Saturday, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't... Yeah, they seem very, like... I understand it's not, like, probably good for young people to watch pornography and have, like, misguided ideas about consent and sex. And
for it to be their entire, like, sexual education. Terrible idea.
But, like,
terrible idea.
I don't know. They seem, like, very focused on it as, like... It's one of those things where it's like, I don't know, like, are you gonna become addicted if you have, like, because I can't say that I've ever considered myself like addicted to porn. Like, I'm aware porn exists in the world. It has its purpose, and when
I shouldn't laugh.
When porn is not in use, it goes back into the recesses of one's mind, never to be thought about again until the next engagement where porn is utilized. Like, it's. I really do think it's like a sex obsession thing with these conservatives.
Well, yeah.
Like, to be constantly thinking about sex, to be constantly worried about, I'm going to be addicted. I've never once worried in my life that I'm going to be like addicted to porn. Like, it's never crossed my mind.
It is a thing that happens.
I'm sure it does, but like...
Yeah, 100%. Like, yeah, there are things that, like, yeah, porn addiction is a real thing. But I think it would just be interesting if they're all like, especially if the argument they're taking is that, like, pornography gives a awful misguided representation of sex and relationships and all that sort of stuff. If they took that line, but also went for, but we do encourage these kinds of sex education materials that show more positive.
Yeah, here are condoms. Here are, here's how to have safe sex. Like, no, it's all about abstinence.
No, it's all about like completely getting rid of all of it rather than educating like, hey, pornography is more like a fantasy perspective of sexual encounters compared to maybe the reality a bit more, and you can have a balance of both, providing you understand
You understand that it's
you're
fictional.
educated across.
You understand that it's not representative of actual sexual activity.
You can't just be doing these like crazy acrobatic positions and go straight from ass to mouth. Like there are these professionals who have prepped for this, both like in cleanliness as well as fitness and da-da-da-da-da. Like, you got to understand all this sort of stuff.
Fitness is the big one. That's the big one. You got to have a bit of tone.
Got to do Kegels.
Exactly.
Adam, I'd argue the cleanliness is probably the big one. Like, don't just I'm fit as fuck. Let's go straight to ass to mouth. No, Adam.
No, I mean
there's other things you need to do.
I feel like we learned something I didn't really need to know about Tom's browsing history there, but that's cool.
Cool. Should we do a talk about Crypto King, end of the world?
Yeah,
I forgot about Sam Bankman dickhead.
Sam Bankman-Fried has been Sam Bankman-Fried.
Freed?
Except he hasn't been freed.
Oh,
he's been found guilty.
Yes, the ongoing Sam Bankman-Fried trial came to a close this week. And he was found guilty of fraud and money laundering at the end of this month-long trial. The jury delivered its verdict after less than 5 hours of deliberations, which is not good. It's never good when a jury comes back with a real quick verdict. They're just sort of
everyone was on the same page.
I imagine they sort of walked in after the trial, and they were just like, "Guilty, yep, guilty, great. Well, we'll get lunch because they're paying for lunch, so we'll get a lunch and then we'll come back and we got to make it look like we actually talked about it for a little bit, but we all agree he's guilty, right? Yeah, super, super guilty. Yeah, quite obviously guilty. Michael Lewis wrote a book about it. It's I don't believe he's been sentenced yet. But obviously
he faces a maximum of 110 years.
Do not fuck with people's money, okay? You can do a Hitler salute, all right, and you'll get a couple of weeks in prison. Okay, you can threaten to bash someone up, okay, for filming you doing Nazi stuff in a state park and get time served. But do not fuck with Henry Kissinger's money, otherwise you will go down like a sack of shit.
Wait, hang on. Was one of the people who Sam Bankman-Fried defrauded Henry Kissinger?
No, I would have loved. No, I was just saying because Kissinger
on the SBF train.
Kissinger got defrauded by Elizabeth Holmes, not Sam Bankman-Fried.
Oh, don't make me like Elizabeth Holmes a little.
It's the best thing she did.
Kissinger's history's greatest monster.
It's pretty bad.
Will contain multitudes, I guess.
But I mean, he did obviously, steal a bunch of money from far-right crypto bro shitheads. So, obviously what they did with Alameda Research and stuff was literally just fraud. Like, he was taking money and
from investors and using it in other
creating
ways.
Tokens that they owned themselves and that they said had value in order to offset the liabilities on their books. And they were self-dealing and loaning money to themselves. And the whole thing was just a bit of a shit show. It's of course you're going to get done for fraud, buddy. I don't know what you would, I don't know if he thought his whole it's doing interviews and stuff throughout this process. I don't know if he just genuinely thought that he was going to outsmart everyone and try and spin the narrative in his own direction.
That wouldn't surprise me. He strikes me as the kind of guy who's I'm the smartest guy in the room. So
sure.
Yeah, I'm going to outsmart everybody.
I'm going to outsmart everyone. I'm going to do a whole public relations campaign. People aren't going to know. But it's just it just goes to show that sometimes a billionaire is just a guy with $1 billion. They're not really necessarily smart or good at things. Yep. It's just I was just a rough, scruffy guy who just a goofy tech billionaire who sat on beanbags and didn't wear a suit in meetings and is playing Xbox. I'm such a genius that I can't be told to wash up for investor meetings. But it turns out he was just a fucking idiot with $1 billion.
Yep.
I think we venerate billionaires. We go, oh, he's got $1 billion. He must have figured something out. It's just
Did he flee? Didn't he flee as well? Once the whole thing came crashing down, he tried to flee to the Bahamas or something.
I think he was in the Bahamas. They were trying to set up a base in the Bahamas. I don't know if he fled there, but it was. I think that was part of the reason for the location in the Bahamas was for tax reasons as well as extradition reasons. They had a sense that some shit was maybe going to go down at some point. But I'd be curious to read the Michael Lewis book. I think I've got it on Audible. So. I'll let you know.
There you go.
Yeah,
don't do fraud. Yeah. Fraud is bad. That's the moral of this episode.
Don't do fraud.
And you're right. Geez, people really throw the book more at fucking with people's money than they do maybe other crimes that are...
Unless you're in the US
more substantial.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. If you're a US senator, you can fuck with as much people's money as you want and there are zero consequences. Just ask... witness to the crucifixion, George Santos.
Who's not, House member, she was a US politician, let's just say that. Yeah.
Look, Bob Menendez just dropped another gold bar. He's laying them like eggs. On that note, we have been, we are, we always will be Unnatural Selection. Make sure you visit us at our salubrious home on the web, unnaturalshow.com. Make sure you follow us on all the bullshit social medias that have, do, or ever will exist. That's Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and mother flippin' TikTok at Unnatural Show. Make sure you follow me on Instagram, Twitter, and Threads at George Tsipos.
You can follow me on Twitter at Tom D. Heath.
And you can follow me down to the Alliance of Responsible Citizenship, where I will be helping everyone to solve the world. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Great.
Good.
Cool.